Might need to do that.
Oh, there we
No,
go. Thanks, Jen.
Jen's
Yeah,
done it.
yeah, fabulous. Great. Well, thank you for having me, and nice to see some of you in the room, in the virtual room. I recognise some of the names, which is nice as well. So yeah, welcome. So this session is around packed lunches, and hopefully just very informal, an opportunity to take away some top tips, and maybe some guidance around kind of how you might want to implement or deliver some sessions within your schools or settings. And just for me to give you a bit of an overview, really, from kind of the Food for Life side of things and packed lunches, and where it kind of all sits and ties in. So I'm going to share my screen. Just bear with me. Okay, cool. Can everybody see that all right?
Yeah, we can see that.
Fabulous. So I can't see anything in the chat. If there's any questions or anything, Kate, are you all right to just stop me? Please,
Sure.
if anybody wants to ask anything as we go along, I'm quite aware that I will be doing quite a lot of talking. But there's a couple of little activities as well that we can do together as a group. And we'll take it from there. But yeah, please jump in if you've got anything that you want to ask along the way. Okay.
I'll keep an eye on the chat and I'll let you know if there's anything comes up.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay. So the aims of this session are we are going to look at the health of our children, which I'm sure everybody is very aware of, and why healthy eating is vital within our settings. We're going to touch on some nutrition education and looking at very briefly the Eat Well Guide, because again, it's a model that's been out there for a long time. But we're going to talk quite a lot about what we call UPFs, which are ultra processed foods. We're going to look at the schools and early years food standards. We are going to have a look at some compliant lunch provision along the kind of the packed lunch line, not school lunches as in school dinners. We're going to then look at a case study and look at kind of how we can engage parents and the wider community to get involved with kind of packed lunches and get involved within the schools, and what we can do to kind of raise the profile of healthy eating, and why, not just healthy eating, but why we want to be kind of touching and tackling this subject. Then there's a little bit around kind of school food policy or packed lunch policy. And we've got lots and lots and lots of resources that we want to give you and share with you at the end. So don't feel like you have to write anything down. You'll get everything sent to you, including the presentation, all of the links and all of the resources that go alongside this session. Okay, so this picture here, does it look familiar? Is this kind of the norm? I would say probably yes, it is. When you're out and about, if you're at a restaurant, children's choices are becoming what we call the beige world. It's a colour that they're familiar with. And unfortunately, it is becoming the norm. So British diets are often lacking in such foods. So instead, we consume the most ultra-processed diet in Europe, which is just frightening. Eating more industrially manufactured, for example, cakes, biscuits, breads, meat pot products, fizzy drinks, snacks, crisps, ready meals, you name it. These are the types of products that are basically taken over. Our diets are often unhealthy, and they are consistently unequal. So the consumption of these ultra-processed products is higher in less affluent groups, while, for example, the consumption of whole foods, and when we talk about whole foods, such as fruits and vegetables, is much lower. So health outcomes such as obesity are also arise along a distant social gradient. So unfortunately, this is becoming the norm, and we want to move it so it's not the norm. So why is it so important? So again, just a few stats here I just wanted to kind of throw at you. And again, I'm sure you've heard them. They're in the press, you name it. So 1 in 7 children, so that's 15%, aged between 2 and 10 in England are obese. Obesity and diet-related disease are a public health emergency. England has one of the highest rates of obesity among high-income nations. 2/3 of adults are living with adult overweight or obesity, and 29% are living with obesity. So these stats are phenomenal. It's absolutely huge. More than 20% of children who start primary school with overweight or obesity, rising to 36% by the time that they leave. So after smoking or tobacco, diet-related risks now make the biggest contribution to years of life lost, which is just a frightening statistic. So why is it so important? And there's wider individual and societal impacts, which are obviously lasting, as you can see on the screen. So obese children are more likely to become obese adults. It's unfair because children in the poorest 10% of households are almost twice as likely to be obese. It's widespread, as I've said, and it's extremely expensive, and it's costing the NHS approximately £1.5 million per day, which is staggering. So before we jump into the actual kind of packed lunch content, I just wanted to almost set the scene in terms of one, reminding all settings and ourselves around the school food standards, which have been in place now for almost 10 years, since 2015, to make the link back to the school food standards and how we can kind of use these standards whilst implementing and educating around packed lunches. So these standards are mandatory in schools, so the school food standards are mandatory in all maintained schools. And it's a governor's responsibility to ensure that these are being met. And you'll know within your school yourself whether or not these are being met or not. And it's quite clear whether they are or they aren't. They're designed to make it easier for school cooks to be a little bit more imaginative, flexible, and to provide some nutritious menus, and for children to want to come to school and have a lovely lunch, a tasty lunch. This can be obviously quite tricky, a tricky subject for schools to tackle, especially with regards to packed lunches, because we're almost out of control, or we don't have any control about what's coming in with the children's packed lunches. So basically what we're saying is we want schools to mirror these standards within their schools for packed lunches as well. And I've just picked out 4 or 5 of the main standards that make up these school food standards. So no snacks except fruit and veg, for example, no sugary drinks such as fizzy pop, for example, no confectionery, which is chocolate or chocolate coated products and things like that. So they have been around for some time, and hopefully you guys are aware of them. This slide here is, we don't have a fancy little table with nice little pictures of the standards yet for the early years. So anybody working in early years settings, these are for you. Up until now, or up until September 25, the early years school food standards have been voluntary, and thankfully come September 2025, they are now going to be mandatory, which is huge news. It's great. It's really good. So the Department for Education intend to basically include a new requirement in the safeguarding and welfare requirements that providers must have basically regard for these new standards and guidance. The The guidance will support providers to understand how to implement these new standards. And basically, the early years are a crucial time to reduce health inequalities and set the foundations for a lifetime of good health. So the sooner that we can capture our younger children with providing them with really good food, the better. I'm not going to go through all of the standards, but 1 portion of fruit and veg with every meal, a portion of protein is mandatory as part of lunch and tea, with a real emphasis on what we call plant-based proteins. So that's using the likes of your beans, your lentils, your pulses. Drinks as well is a big one, where only water and milk are to be provided with an early years setting, the same as schools. So no juice, no energy drinks, no fizzy drinks, no squash, no anything like that. Literally water or milk. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that before we get started. And this table here is, again, you'll get a copy of it, but it highlights the food groups that are essential for early years children, which mirror the Eat Well plate. So the Eat Well plate really is for school age children from 5 and above. Okay, so what a healthy diet looks like, I'm sure everybody is very, very familiar with this plate. It's been around for a number of years. It's got its good side, it's got its bad side, but it's what we've been told by the Department for Education is what we're using at the moment to promote a healthy diet. So we are looking at eating a variety, lots of colour, lots of different starchy carbohydrates for us to be able to get what we call our macro and our micronutrients. And our micronutrients are really important for children's health, and that's our vitamins and minerals. So not too much, not too little, or the wrong balance, just a balanced overall plate of goodness. But actually, if we break that down, it's a lot more complex than just saying that. I'm not going to go into the Eat Well plate in a huge amount of depth today, but we can pick up on that in terms of kind of portion sizes from the new early year standards as well. So there's a whole new guidance on portion sizes. So it's a whole new webinar, that one. So just visually, Eat Well guide, we know 1/3 should be coming from our fruits and vegetables, 1/3 from our carbohydrates. Our pink section is the protein with lots of plant-based proteins, our fish, our eggs, our nuts, and our dairies, our milk and our cheese for calcium, which is crucial for children. The ones obviously in our in the red triangle are the foods high in fat, sugar and salt. There is actually no place in our diet for these types of products. They are what we call empty calories. They don't bring us any nutrition whatsoever. So that's why they sit outside of the Eat Well guide. And we can have a really, truly balanced, nutritious, tasty diet without these types of products anywhere near. So we want to reduce them. And we're all human, let's face it, we're all human when we all like a treat and we all like a biscuit with our cuppa, and it's absolutely okay. But within the school day and the early years setting day, we don't need them. So yes, we want lots of these. Okay, so let's move on to kind of what we class as whole food before we just launch into packed lunches, because we talk about ultra processed foods a lot, and it's a new word, it's a new phrase, and there's lots of kind of background information that goes alongside ultra processed foods. So whole foods are foods that have not been processed. So for example, your fresh fruit, your veg, your whole grains such as oats, brown rice, nuts, beans, eggs, things like that. Whole foods consist of a single ingredient and are largely consumed pretty much as they're found in nature. So they've not been tampered with, they're all in their natural state. So for example, think of an apple or a bean or a mushroom. These are all classified as whole foods. So we're looking to aim to have lots of these in our diet. Whole foods and less ultra processed means more fiber. So if a product or a food product has not been tampered with. You're going to remain, or it's going to have its remaining fiber content. It's going to have its original vitamins and minerals. It's going to fill up the children's tummies, which can be pretty much the problem when it comes to these ultra-processed foods, which I'll touch on in a moment. And we want lots of plant-based proteins. So you might start to see coming through on the school meals, for example, lots more beans, peas, chickpeas, pulses, lentils, things like that. And we want that replicated in our packed lunch boxes as well. Okay, so here we have a screen of typical ultra-processed foods. Okay, so these would be an example of real culprit products. I'm sure we all recognize them. I'm sure we've all eaten them or drank them at some point in our time. We might actually be sat with a can of something in front of us as we speak, or a little biscuit with us with our coffee or cup of tea. Okay, so ultra processed foods, I just want to tell you a little bit about them and why we're trying to move them out of packed lunches or out of kind of our overall diets as much as possible. They're formulations of food substances with very little or any whole food. And basically they contain lots of what we call additives, colors, flavorings, and emulsifiers. So these products are designed to be really palatable, convenient, and are often sold in large portion sizes and are really well marketed. They are so well marketed to the age group or the community group that they're so good at it. These products are obviously, they're tasty, they're convenient, and for some people, they may be all that's available. But we know, and evidence is now indicating, that excessive consumption is really harmful to health, particularly children from a young age. And scientists are starting to study the causes and understand that some ultra-processed foods, they interfere with satiety signaling, which is basically the feeling of fullness, which can then lead to almost like the addiction. So it triggers something in our brain, which then wants us to eat more and more and more of it. Hence why more empty calories, and the cycle just keeps going round and round and round. So more than half the calories the average person in the UK eats now comes from ultra-processed foods. And if you've ever had a week or a weekend where you might have had a bit of a binge, or it's just I don't know, convenient night or a couple of days, and then you try and wean yourself off them, you might actually experience some sign of withdrawal, headaches, cravings, weakness, all sorts of kind of real like addiction kind of symptoms. And that's because they are pumped so heavily full of these additives and things like that. So this is why we want to move away from these types of products where possible. And then I've just popped up a slide there for anybody in the early years settings. And these would be your typical kind of examples of really young ultra-processed foods that you might find in as snacks or within packed lunch boxes. Again, they're quick, they're easy, and they're very well marketed. They make out that they are so nutritious and they're full of fruit and blah de blah. But good reasons to avoid these commercial snacks. One is because they are extremely expensive. They are lacking in fiber. So for example, the pouch, the baby pouch, I think that's an apple and a pear pouch or something. It's stripped of its natural kind of fiber content and things like that. So it's really high in sugar, and it actually doesn't taste anything like an apple or a pear. So it doesn't really help our younger children recognize and taste the food that we want them to taste. And then when we put an actual whole product like an apple or a pear in front of them, it's like, oh, well, that's not what comes out of a pouch. So it's really recognizing the you know, the food in its whole state, and these types of products are not helping. The other thing that you'll notice about these products, not just early years and young products, but the likes of your puff style crisps, Quavers, Wotsits, things like that. There's been loads of research recently around how they actually hinder speech development, because the child is using a sucking motion rather than a chewing motion. So the muscles in their mouth are not being developed properly. And by the time that child gets to the start of primary school, their speech is really behind. And a lot is to do with these types of products that they're eating, which is just shocking and unfair because it's not the child's fault. So a few bits of information just around ultra-processed foods. I'm not going to go through them all, but basically it's ultra-processed food consumption is linked to stunted growth and childhood obesity. New research has shown that these types of products now have a huge impact on children's mental health, which we are seeing more and more and more of coming through early years and schools, which is really frightening. So there are things that we can do within our settings to try and reduce this as well. But you will get these slides, so I'll skip through them and you read them in your own time. So I just wanted you to either in the chat or just in your head or note it down on a piece of paper, whatever's easiest and convenient for you. I've just popped a few products up there, and all I want you to do is just have a look at them, and I want you to guess how many teaspoons of sugar would be in each of these products. And I've just picked some of your typical foods and drinks that you might find in packed lunches or generally just as a snack. So the left-hand side is your food. So the Haribo there, that's a family-sized bag. And again, lots of kind of research and feedback from parents and children. It's actually the norm for young children to eat a family bag of Haribo. That it wouldn't be split as a family between maybe 4 or 5 within the household, that a child would just quite easily eat a family bag of Haribo. Same with fruit pastels and things like that. So just very quickly, just give you a couple of minutes just to have a little think about that.
Feel free to jot down any ideas in the chat if you wish.
Okay. So here we go. The results are in. So in a family bag of Haribo, we have 23 teaspoons of sugar, and basically additives, flavorings, emulsifiers, guar gum, all sorts of nasties that are bringing our body absolutely no nutrition or micronutrients at all. 8 NMRs, cookies, again, these are typical things that you would see in a packed lunch or just given as a snack. Lots and lots and lots of sugar in drinks, 14 in a bottle of Coke. And how many bottles of Coke easily could a child get through possibly in a day? Maybe 2, 3, thinking about it. Ribena, same. So I just wanted to pop that out there and it's a really nice exercise to do if you're inviting parents in, or the wider community, or you're just doing an exercise within the school, within your classroom, around sugar consumption and what the benefits and what the disadvantages are, you know, and things like that around sugar. So it really makes the children sit up and think, wow, that's a lot. Okay, so let's get into actual packed lunches themselves. So we know that as a nation, we are overeating daily. Parents often cram the lunch boxes full of what we call junk, in case their child is hungry, and that is becoming, when we ask parents or grown-ups or whoever the child lives with, it's just in case they get hungry. So they'll just put in an extra thing just in case. This has to be quite possibly the worst thing that they can do as children. Well, you know, they'll automatically go for the likes of the high fat, the high sugar, the high salt item first. And quite often they take the longest to eat. So they might be in a packet, they might be individual wrapped products, things like that. And then they run out of time because the lunchtime is not long enough to eat the main part of the lunch, which might be the sandwich, the pasta box, whatever it might be. So those types of foods are then left. There's a huge amount of waste, and the child is just pumped full of high sugar, high salt, high fat product. Also, children's stomachs are really small. So we don't need to overfill lunch boxes. They're really, really small. And how I always say it is if you clench your fist, depending if you're an adult, that's pretty much the size of your tummy, and the same with the children. So it's half the size, if not a third of the size of an adult. So it's really small, and the amount of food that's, you know, that a child is asked to eat in it from a packed lunch can be phenomenal. Also thinking about waste. And then the other thing is around whose responsibility is it to get rid of rubbish, for example, when these types of packaged products are coming through. Is it the school's responsibility? Do you ask the child to take the rubbish home in their packed lunches? So there's lots to think about when it comes to packed lunches. But the key is to have a balanced and nutritious diet and a variety. So we want children to be looking forward to lunchtime, and we want them to be excited about what they're going to be having. So every day is not the same. And I know in an ideal world, we're all busy and it's, we'll just throw in bits and pieces. But it's about getting some top tips out to your parents of what you can do. And hopefully by the end of this, we'll have some recipes, we'll have some resources to give you that you can then interact with your parents. Okay, so a nice activity to do with them is just some comparisons. So certain comparisons. So this one is a crisp, and I've done this many a time. All you do is you get your typical kind of ultra processed products from your crisps. We look at the ingredients. This particular product has got 23 ingredients. Some of them you can't even pronounce. I can't even pronounce them. No idea, even as a nutritionist, couldn't tell you what disodium 5-ribonucleotide is. It's a chemical, it's an additive of some sort. Anything, there's a real nasty in there. It's called monosodium glutamate, which is, or you might know it as MSG, and that's a flavor enhancer, and that's found in lots of really highly flavored products. So typically your crisps, your Pringles, your Chinese food, ready meals, things like that. And it's actually banned in our Food for Life schools. So that's one to kind of look out for as well. And just to highlight to your parents, really, around these types of products. So you would then ask them, okay, what's the alternative to a packet of crisps like this? And this one here is a very basic ready salted potato crisp. It's not ultra processed. It is processed because it's had to be taken from turn a potato into a crisp. So it's processed, but there's only 3 ingredients, and those 3 ingredients are whole ingredients. So there's nothing wrong with a packet of crisps in this form or this processed state, but obviously you wouldn't want the child having lots and lots and lots of bags. But 1 packet of crisp in this form is okay compared to the one on the left. So it's just a visual exercise really to do in a workshop. The next one. So the next one is a ready-made pudding comparison. So these ones are, again, the 16 ingredients in this one. Some of them you might not recognize the names of. Mini chocolate flavored cookies, and a alternative to that may be a product here. There's only 6 ingredients. This is a raw fruit and nut bar. Obviously, I need to highlight that if you're a nut-free school, you wouldn't be promoting a nut bar. But it just shows the comparison from a processed product to an ultra-processed product. And this is kind of what we're looking at. The less ingredients, the better, basically. And then this one's always a really good one. Yogurt comparison. Again, quite often you find lots of yogurts coming through in packed lunches in the form of Froops or Fromage Frais, all these kind of squeegee pouches and things. And you'll notice if you look at the ingredients, there's a huge amount of ingredients in them. And then your comparison, you could ask in your workshop, what would be a better alternative? And for example, a natural Greek yogurt or just natural yogurt with added fruit yourself. Frozen berries is a perfect snack, and there's only one ingredient. So I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but when you get a group of families together and they're talking about it and they're actually looking at labels and ingredients within foods, it's quite an eye-opener. It's quite good. And then look, no labels. And this is your true example of a whole food. So just to point out that some foods don't have ingredients at all on their labels, and they don't have a label because they are the ingredient. This is what we want. This is what we want to see in packed lunches. We want to see children eating bananas in the whole form, mini peppers in the whole form, without any drama attached to it. Okay, now how colourful is this? Appealing? So we want children to be bringing in packed lunches to have a variety of colour. One, because it's visual and it looks appealing and hopefully they'll want to eat it. But also because it's going to provide them with essential nutrition. So the vitamins and minerals required for child health. We all eat with our eyes, even adults, we eat with our eyes, and children are absolutely no different. So we want to encourage parents to be loading up their boxes with lots of different colours within their packed lunches, but natural colours within obviously you know, the limitations. So examples, there's lots of different examples here, and there's lots of resources that you will take away after here in terms of recipes. But I always try and encourage families to split it into three. So to choose the main section of your lunchbox, being your whole foods. So whether it's a pita, whether it's a sandwich, a wrap, rice salad, couscous salad, whatever it might be, loaded with your you know, with your colour and your salads and your lettuce and bits and pieces. Then having a complement, so whether it's a fruit pot, whether it's cheese for your dairy, whether it's a low-fat yogurt in its natural form, and then your drink. And that is actually enough for a child. That's a decent lunch. There's nowhere there that needs chocolate biscuits, bags of crisps, sweeties or gummies or anything like that. There's actually no place in a child's diet for that. They don't need it. So it's trying to kind of, it's moving mindset really into getting the child involved in actually making their packed lunch as well, so that they're taking ownership of it. Okay. So it's just some steps to help improve packed lunches, which I'm sure you guys are doing anyway in some form. But sending out lots of examples back home. So whether it's a recipe weekly or whether it's in a newsletter, this is what we're going to be focusing on today. Or have you heard there's a lovely pasta salad on the school lunch? Why don't you try it at home and bring it in as a packed lunch? Getting your school nutrition action group actively involved in driving forward packed lunches, and what do they think about what should be in packed lunches? What do they think the school should be doing to tackle this? And communication with your parents and school and home is vital. So trying to get them in where possible, invite them into workshops or assemblies so that they feel part of it, so that the school's not telling them all the time, right, this is what we're doing and this is what you're allowed and this is what you're not allowed. It's really trying to get the parents and the wider community engaged in what can be quite a tricky subject. This slide here, I'm not going to touch on a huge amount, but it's making the most of meal times. So quite often it can be tricky for schools to accommodate everybody throughout the lunchtime. So it's around involving the children, getting them to help where possible in preparing some of the food and serving it. So even if you do have packed lunches, making them integrated and be part of lunchtime. Quite often I've seen, whilst going into various different schools, that the packed lunchers are set in a different room sometimes, and they're not part of the lunchtime service at all. So really trying to integrate the packed lunchers with the school dinners as well, sitting together, making friends with your school caterer is a key top tip. If you can become best friends with your caterer and you can ask them to even, put a few extra little tasters from the salad bar onto tables with packed lunches so that they can see what's being served, they can see that they can have a little taste if they want, then you kind of onto a winner almost. An encouragement of children to try new different foods, sampling some of the school meals as well, and obviously your good table manners and etiquette, which I'm sure is already happening. And then I'm not going to touch on this one, but extra considerations. The main one that I'm just going to pick out there is storage of warm meat. So if you do know of children who are bringing in, meat and ham sandwiches and things like that, or chicken in a pasta salad, just to make the parents and the school aware that they must be stored correctly so that we don't want any poisoning going on. So running a packed lunch session, and this is kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty and just giving you some top tips and an example of a lovely case study that's been done. So running a packed lunch session in school can be done as a class activity. It can be done inviting parents in. It can be done in smaller groups. It can be done as a whole. Can be done as a whole school even. So planning the session really carefully with your class. So getting them involved, deciding what the activity is going to be, where it's going to happen. It's going to happen in the hall. Is it going to be in the lunch hall? Is it going to be in the classroom? Making it fun and practical. Lots of engagement and lots of tasting. I personally don't think you can run a food activity without having tasters along the way. It's the kind of it's almost like the lever, isn't it? It's like trying to entice the parents in to taste lots of things, and it's quite good fun seeing the child trying to encourage mum or dad or granddad to try something different, and lots of discussion and feedback sessions. So it's just thinking about the actual session in itself. So this you'll get a copy of this case study. This was a case study delivered in Lancashire Commission, and they've recently delivered a number of practical and inspiring workshops. So where parents and pupils who regularly have packed lunches were invited to attend a workshop for an hour before the end of school. So they came into school and then they were able to work with their child for an hour, and then they came home with their child at the end of the day. And due to the numbers, so the numbers were very high, a series of workshops were scheduled, so one a week for each year group. And the workshop addressed common barriers, and the common barriers and challenges seem to be very similar in every school that we go into. So for example, some of the challenges were cost. So they looked at cost of a pre-bought product compared to homemade, for example. They did a challenge on swaps, so healthy lunchbox swaps, which is always a fun one. And then the sugar one, which is really good, similar to what we did in the previous slides, looking at how many cubes or teaspoons of sugar in certain products. And it just is a really lovely way to get the parents and the children together and actually discussing, right, okay, let's build our own healthy packed lunch and figure out what's going to be best for us as a family. And the session was really practical and allowed the parents and the children to work together to build the packed lunch, and then they took that away with them, with lots of recipes and tasting of various different sandwich fillings and things like that. So it was really, really positive. But you will get the full case study sent to you. So the next couple of slides, I've got two little films I just want to share with you. I know we're a bit conscious of time. Have we got time, Kate? Do you think?
I think we could do one of them, probably.
Should we do one of them? Yeah, let's do one of them. I think we'll do hummus.
Yeah,
okay.
I was going to suggest that too.
Yeah, okay. So we've got lots and lots of these films on what we call our Learning and Skills Hub for our Food for Life schools. And they are really visual, and the idea of them is that you can pop them up on your whiteboards, you can send them as a YouTube link back home or put in a newsletter so that you can work alongside either in the classroom or grown-ups and the wider community can work outside of the school with children. They're really simple, they're really cheap to follow. So let's see if it works. That working?
Yep.
Yes, it's working.
Right. There we go. Okay, so that was just an example of one that you could do. That's a very simple, straightforward. You can just use hand blenders, and you can add different flavors to your hummus. A nice activity to just get children and their parents, or just children as an activity within school, just tasting new flavors and textures. And a brilliant example of a plant-based protein that can be added to all sorts of pittas, to wraps, to crackers, things like that, as an alternative to a pre-bought, I don't know, sausage roll or something like that. Okay. So repeated offering is, this is a really, really difficult thing to do, especially when parents are sending lunches in, which at the moment settings maybe don't have so much control over. So keep offering new foods where possible, such as salad options, and like I keep saying, making friends with your caterers. Set taste challenges and try making tasting new foods fun. So there's just a couple of stats there. Again, it can take anything between 8 and 14 times of offering a food before a child or an adult actually accepts it as a new taste. So it is quite hard work, offering new foods and just making parents aware that that is okay. That's the norm. It's not unusual if your child refuses something, but it's just reinforcing that message to just keep trying and keep offering and don't give up. Okay, last little bit is around, before I just talk you through some of the resources that we've got, the key thing to all of this is, one, having an active SNAG or school nutrition action group, or a food group within your school, but also to go back to your setting or to your senior management group to ask the question, do we have a school food policy? And within that school food policy, is there a mention anywhere of packed lunches? So I think that's the first thing that I would do, or I'd suggest to do, and just read it, because quite often there is a packed lunch policy or there is a school food policy there, but it might have been from 10 years ago when the school food standards were kind of launched. And is it up to date? Does it need tweaking? Have we got a group of people who within the school and wider community, parents and children involved in developing our own school food policy or packed lunch policy? So it's a whole school approach to developing it, to make sure that it's embedded within your school environment. And that's really key. It must be led and have the backing from senior leadership. And without that, it's not going to be onto a winner, basically. And I think a top tip from me is don't be scared to ask or tell parents what the school rules are. So school food is a rule. School standards are mandatory, as is school uniform, as is an allergy policy. It's part of the school rules. So I wouldn't be scared of bringing up the conversation or bringing up the subject of if little Johnny's bringing in a Mars bar and an energy drink within his packed lunch. I would be challenging, and I think it's acceptable to do that because these are the rules and the reasons why. So always back up. My top tip there is to always back up why that is a rule, because of obviously child health. We've got attention deficit, the peaks and the troughs of sugar spikes, the sleepiness, just don't be scared to bring up the conversation or just have a conversation with the wider community. And governors, it's essential, they must take action. And there's a lovely link now, because by September 2025, there's a new climate and sustainability policy that all schools must have in place. So this links very nicely into this new policy. So again, just maybe go back to within school or ask the question, have we got or are we developing our climate and sustainability policy? And while we're there, have we got a packed lunch policy? There's lots and lots of examples on our Learning and Skills Hub on the portal as well. And there's a link there to it that gives you templates if you wanted to create your own, or we can support you in developing that further as well. But it's pretty crucial and I'd say essential that there is some sort of school food policy that incorporates packed lunches as well. Especially for early year settings with the new mandatory standards coming in September, this is a perfect opportunity and perfect time to write out to wider communities and parents to let them know. Okay, so that kind of takes us to the end, but I just wanted to run through some of the resources that we have available to you that we will send to you after the webinar. So we have developed a packed lunch leaflet resource, very colourful, easy to read, very visual, that you can print off, download and send on to parents or send home or just use as a teaching tool within your classrooms. Lots of lovely recipes to follow, lovely leftovers, all sorts of things that you can trial within your settings. We've got our Learning and Skills Hub that is available to all Food for Life schools, and there's an array of all sorts of bits and pieces on there. There's lots of the films, there's the school food standards, there's recipes galore, all things around hydration and hydration stations, which is a really good one to start implementing if we're possibly taking away some of the Coke or the fizzy juice that you might be seeing coming in and replacing with lovely flavoured citrus waters. There's all sorts of nice fun things that you can do on the hub. There's some research here that I've to back up basically some of the things that I've been talking about, but there's a brilliant, if you've got time or if you're traveling in the car or at any opportunity, there is the link here is a debate that the Soil Association presented at the House of Lords last year, It's a brilliant listen that presents basically all sides to ultra-processed food consumption. So you can actually Google the full report, but the debate is brilliant to listen to. Really, really interesting, gives you all sides of the story. And then another just very recent publication from the Soil Association, which was published in May, just gone, marks the launch of the Soil Association's new campaign, and it's called Tell the Whole Truth. And again, it's around ultra-processed foods. The link is there for the full document. The full report is very readable. It's not very lengthy, but it's basically calling on the government to tell the truth about the food that we are consuming. It's a really, really interesting read. So download that if you can. And then the last thing I wanted to just highlight here is a link to BBC iPlayer. Again, you can play this in classrooms, talking about bodies and food. It's a link to the 2024 Christmas lectures with Chris Van Tulliken. And teachers can put this on in the class, along with using our resources around packed lunches, just to start the conversation around packed lunches and healthy food and whole foods and ultra-processed foods. It's a whole world out there of foodie things, but it's really, really interesting. And then the last one is I've just put all sorts of different links to nutrition, to Food for Life, the NHS links to their healthier lunchboxes as well, just for any additional resources that you may want or need. And I think that takes us to the end. And I know I've run over, I'm so sorry. But I'm always here at the end, at the other end of a phone or email to answer any questions if anybody has any desire, or if I can point you in the right direction to anything. I'm more than happy to do that. But thank you ever so much for all your time and to listening to me ramble on.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you very much. Lots of information there to take in and lots of resources for you to make use of subsequently as well. It's helpful to have a curated set of resources for people to make use of, because there's so much stuff out there. It's often a bit overwhelming to know what's going to be useful and what's going to make life easier rather than more difficult. Thank you, Lee, very much. Are there any particular questions right now that we can answer? You can either speak or put something in the chat if you wish.
I'm just going to stop sharing now. There we go. Back in
there
the room.
We are. We can see you now. We will, as I said, we will be sending out all the resources and all the information so that you've got it all in one place. And as with what Lee said, I'm really happy to help with anything that you may need help with as well. So if you do come up with any questions, or you've got anything you need some guidance on to do with packed lunches or anything else food related in school, do let us know and we'll do whatever we can to help. I just thought I saw somebody starting to type something then, but it's disappeared again. So maybe they've changed their minds. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Be in touch. We will be in touch with you. And if you're thinking about the tricky business of trying to challenge parents about what you allow into your schools for packed lunches, I'd just like to leave you with this thought. I've been to visit a number of different early years settings, all in West Northants very recently in the past few weeks, and early years settings are being really, really strict. So when parents bring packed lunches in for the small children, they are actually opening them, looking at what's inside the boxes and sending things home again if they think they're not good enough, which I'm not suggesting for a minute you need to add to your very long list of things that you do on a daily basis. But I just think it's really interesting to note that some settings are willing to be quite firm about what they're allowing children to bring in their packed lunches. So that's hopefully a bit of support for you in the back of your mind that it is possible. Yeah, and absolutely. Whatever we can do to help, we will. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lee. Lots of thank yous from people who were here. No more questions at the moment, but do let us know if you have any, and we'll do our best to help.
Have a lovely day, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you for coming.